Please join me in giving David Todd a warm Pachyderm Club welcome.
Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Dad. And thank you, Derry, for being here. And our other partner who's not here is Brad Dobbs, if anyone knows Brad Dobbs. Okay, so I put this together because some of the students at WSU wanted to know about starting a PT practice. So I said, okay, well, I'll kind of tell you what I did, and we'll go over it. And we did a 5-week lecture series, and my dad was part of it. And so here we go. So my dad went over the mission. This is what we do. We did this 15 years ago. We still do this today. This is what made us grow into how big we are right now. And we're right around 250 employees right now. And I'm sorry, I've got a head cold, so it's kind of hard to talk here. And then our vision statement, which is big for me, which is to build relationships and improve the wellness of the communities that we serve. We've been able to serve Wichita for the past 15 years, so thank you for that. So the drivers, 5 of them: population base, referrals, staff, space, and cash. And Derry has a little part on the cash section. That's good for a CPA to look at the cash, right? So here's what I start with the students. Where do you want to start a clinic? Do you want to start a clinic on the moon? That probably wouldn't work out, because let's talk about the population of the moon. Nobody lives there. To open up any location, you need to have a significant number of people, and you have to have a number of significant people. Now, if I was on the moon, maybe my low back pain would be a little bit worse because I don't have as much gravity on there, but it wouldn't be a good place to open up a PT shop. So you probably want to open up a place on Earth. To be more specific, you probably want to open up a place in Kansas. Of course, I'm talking to the Wichita State students, or I'm talking to the KU students, or the Rockhurst students. Maybe in Oklahoma if I'm talking to Oklahoma students. And you probably want to open up a place in Wichita. And you just can't even necessarily open up a place in Wichita. It's probably a particular sector of Wichita. Because if you're going to go to physical therapy, and if you're going to go there 2 or 3 times a week, it's probably an area that you want to drive to, right? You don't want to drive all the way from the east side to the west side, east side. So I could be the best therapist in Kansas City, and I could come down to Wichita and I can think I can do well, and I can fail. Why is that? Because you don't have relationships with the people in that population base. Luckily, I was born here, raised here. I went to North High, I went to WSU, went to WSU PT. My dad, he knows everybody. Derry knows everybody else. Brad Dobbs knows everybody else. So that helped me out quite a bit. So what do I look at? I look at a population of 5,000 people to yield 20 referrals a month. One doctor could have 5,000 people. So basically, I pretty much targeted the doctors. I could have lunch with one doctor, and it cost me a lot less money than having taking lunch for 5,000 people. So that's kind of a good way to do it. I'm not telling them what to do. I'm just saying this is kind of things to look at and to target. So how did I do it? I was working at Novacare, which is a national company. It's a good company, but I was looking for an opportunity. Brad Dobbs called me up on the phone one day. I didn't know this guy from anybody. Well, actually called somebody else in my office up. And he was looking to expand his location and looking to bring in physical therapy. In 2003, wrong one. Right here, the legislation changed that they could refer to PT, so that opened up a whole new pie, so to speak. And he didn't want to bring in more chiropractors because he wanted to keep that business himself. And what he had was 4 providers, and they had 50,000 patient visits a year. So for one provider, if you're looking for 5,000 people and having 50,000, that's probably a pretty good guesstimate on that. Might kind of work for you. Oh, back to this. So this is kind of what changed. Chiropractors could refer, PAs were referring more, and you still have the MD referrals. So that was kind of a significant change there. So he was having another issue with one of the drivers, and that was space. They had 50,000 visits, and they had 18 parking spots. Can you imagine how that could be kind of a, so they needed a bigger facility. And my target goal when I look at a doctor's office is 1% of their population. Say if they saw 100 people, maybe one would have musculoskeletal conditions and one person that I could see as a referral. So that's 500 per year or 42 per month. And for my statistics, that's good enough for 2 providers. So we moved into 5119 East Kellogg. He added 2 more providers, so 1 PT, 6 DCs, 100 parking spaces, so everyone's needs was met. I had my population base, I had my referrals, he had his space. So this is what I posed to them. This is the first week of stuff. So I said, what's important to you? Look at your population base. And I say, you can go anywhere, right? Wherever, come back to me. What are the demographics that you're gonna look at? What insurances are in that particular area, because different insurances do pay differently. Does it have a significant population? Or do you have a number of people in that population that know everybody? So that's their homework. Come to me next week with your population base and we'll beat it up. So the next thing is referrals. How are you going to turn your population base into referrals? So over the years, I've been able to meet with some really good people. Randy Freezer, he started Accelerated Physical Therapy, and they grew it up to 225 locations before he sold it all. But he said referrals are not only the blood flow of the clinic, but it's a constant reminder of how important patient outcomes are and how much both patients and doctors appreciate what we do. And I think, and that makes sense. If you don't get good results, you don't stay around for that long. So what do you do when you open a clinic? And of course, I'm talking to students here. Do you sit in your office? Do you hope? Do you pray? You know, you put your banner up, think people are going to come in? It doesn't happen that way. Do you go out and do something about it? Yes, you go out and do something about it. So action steps win out. So you need a number of significant people, a significant number of people, and a number of significant people, and you have to reach both of those people. Do relationships matter? Heck yeah, they do. We're a relationship business. Does anyone know Dr. Sherman, John Sherman? He recently retired. Yeah, great guy. He's on our board, and even though he knows us and he's on our board, he says, David, I don't send to a company, I send to a person. When he sends his patients somewhere, he wants to know who they're sending them to and that they're going to be treated well. How do we establish relationships? By building trust. If we go out and we say we're going to do something, we're going to do it. Our actions need to support the mission statement and our core values. And our core values are quality, service, and relationships on a daily basis. We have community involvement. And when we look at a community, we're looking at maybe a population of 30,000 within a community. But as you see around, if you go to any runs or any things like that, you'll see our signs and our banners doing some stuff with that. And then we break our doctor referrals into favorites and prospects. Favorites are one that send quite a bit. Prospects are ones that we're looking to get more from. The favorites, we go to their offices on a weekly basis, the same time, same day, every week. Why? It establishes trust. We say we'll be there next week. If you have any physical therapy questions or occupational therapy questions, we can answer them for you. We're their go-to person for all those questions. And there are prospects we hit on a monthly basis, and we have our marketing department take care of that. But the hope is to get them with that relationship like a favorites. And as we get more locations, you'll pick up more favorites just because they're in proximity to where your clinic is at. So, internal, external marketing. This is from Tiffany Sutherland, who does marketing around the Wichita area. Highly important to establish a relationship with doctors and their staff in your target area. Part of establishing that relationship is by personally visiting on a routine basis, like I was talking about, so that the staff can get to know you and expect you. It's important to get to know the right people, starting with the front desk, asking the important questions. so that you can get the decision to the decision makers. A lot of times people do go out marketing, but they really don't ask who makes the decisions. Who does the referring? Do you have a referral coordinator, or does your nursing staff handle the referrals? Do they and the doctors have time to speak, or is there a time that we can set up a quick meeting? So it's just going on to the next step, the next step, the next step, the next step. Take information with you. Maps, brochures, specialty cards. Going back to a population base, like let's just say Derby, we're going to open up our second location in Derby this summer. We're going to add a pediatrics part because there's a lot of families in that particular area. So we're going to have a whole part in that. We'll have a pediatric specialist there. Find out more about who they treat and how you might be able to help them. Most importantly, do not linger. Respect the time of each person you come in contact with, and don't overstay your welcome. You might be thinking you're doing good marketing, but you're actually killing yourself. You should be doing 30% of the talking and 70% of the listening. Community outreach. It's important to establish a positive reputation and trust with the community members that may need the services now, but by creating a trustworthy relationship within the community, they will likely choose if they were to need services. Getting in front of the community members before they need our services allows us to be proactive in creating a first impression. Most of the community outreach that we are doing allows us to engage with the potential patients in person, creating positive experiences. I guess that's kind of what I'm doing right here. Digital marketing increases brand awareness, which I'm not too big in, but good thing our marketing department's big into that. Humanizes our brand and stays top of mind awareness, increases our website traffic, promotes our own educational content, and ultimately generates referrals as well. Example here, sometimes we look at a particular market and we say, well, we can be better at this particular sector. In Wichita, we said we could be better at work comp. We have the majority of outpatient services, but we don't in work comp. So we did a deep dive on how to get those, and we grew 40% last year in work comp referrals. And overall, we had 18% growth in work comp. Customer satisfaction is key. Happy and satisfied patients are considered net promoters and will share their experience with others. In the last 6 months, we have had a 90+% NPS score, which is a net promoter score, and we think that's great. And we follow up with any unsatisfactory responses to ensure that everyone's needs are met too. So, internal marketing, that's your first impression. You know, in the first 10 seconds, you kind of get 80% of your thoughts are whether this place is going to be a good place or not a good place. So make sure that your waiting room is clean, has your mission and vision statements, your core values, have some coffee snacks there. We give a t-shirt at the end of treatment. Has anybody seen our t-shirts around town? Yes, they're great marketing things, and you guys probably graduated, huh? There you go. We do a lot of fun stuff like March Madness, chili cook-offs, and a big thing with us is one-on-one patient care. The biggest thing that patient looks for whether they had a good experience or not is the relationship with their treating provider. So if we provide one-on-one care, that's going to enhance that relationship. So referrals and visits, we're looking for 20 referrals per clinical FTE, which equates into 200 to 240 visits. So how are you going to turn your population base into referrals? This is the question to them. They're supposed to come back the next week and say how they're going to go out and who they're going to identify and what their statistics are on that and how they're going to grow it. So the next thing is staff. Karen Wilson, and if you guys all get the business journal, she was in the business journal, I think today, for Healthcare Heroes. She was our first employee as well. She said it's not a problem finding people, it's finding the right people. A number 3 drivers for a successful clinic is staff. As your clinic grows, you'll need to know how much staff it takes to be successful. This is how we did it. In 2004, we had 14 employees. And then 2009, 86. 5 years after that, 152. 4 years after that, 233. We're at 250 plus now. And the trend is 5 years from now, we'll be well over 300 employees. So we categorize them in two categories. One is clinical, one is administrative. Care coordinators and techs are the administrative. There's also the whole billing department. There's also the whole marketing department. They're considered administrative as well. So this is mainly for them, but if I have one clinical FTE, I get 20 to 30 referrals, which equates into 15 to 25 evals, because not all of them are going to be evals, and 200 to 300 visits per month, and that equates out to about 10 patients per day. So if it's a new area, we look for a provider that has relationships in that area, and we really look for a specialty in that particular area that they can provide as well. Here's kind of a pro forma chart. Our ideal clinic is about 5 providers, and we're looking at going from 15 to 25 all the way to 75 to 125 with 1,000 to 1,200 visits with 5 clinical providers and 2+ administrative providers. That's kind of the formula that we like to use, and I like to give this to managers, and they don't go with it, but that's okay. They typically do. They do a good job of that. Okay, so when you have the number of visits, you can calculate your top line then. And this is where Derry comes in. He likes looking at this stuff. Let's just say you got $90 a visit, and you have 200 visits, that's $18,000. And if you got $75 per visit times 240, that's also $18,000. The reason why that I put $18,000 here is because the average salary for a PT in Wichita, as well as Kansas City, is $80,000, and we like to keep our clinical cost at 40%. Okay, so if 40% of total revenue is the PT's base salary, that's pretty much what they need to be doing if they want to get paid that amount. And most good therapists don't mind getting paid what somebody else does. They don't want to get paid less than somebody else does. So going back to the guidelines, you have referrals and visits with the conversion rate, with your patient visit average, how many times you see them, and we like to have a cancellation rate of less than 15%. And we track all these things on scorecards. Another kind of formulary for that as to where we should be. If somebody sees maybe more kids, they don't need to be seen as much. They might just have to do more evaluations. If it's somebody with a lot of comorbidities, they might not have to see as many because they're going to have a higher PVA. National averages on PVAs or patient visit averages is 10 to 15. We're right about 10, so we're at the really low end of that sort of thing. So how do we know what we need to get our staff to do. The question is, how do we get them to do it, and how do we get them to be happy doing these things too? So what we say is happy and satisfied employees equals happy and satisfied patients. So do you guys agree with that last statement, by the way? That's good, because you agree with statistics then. Because happy and satisfied employees do lead to happy and satisfied patients. It doesn't matter if you're working at Advanced Physical Therapy or if you're working at McDonald's or wherever. If your employees, especially frontline employees, are happy and satisfied at work, it's going to reflect onto your clients. And managers are better able to relate to their employees with effective training and leadership. So what do employees want to know? They want to know what their job is. They want to know what the expectations are. And then we also modify the environment to foster daily relationships. Why do we do this? Because we don't say people quit a company, they quit a boss, right? So if everyone in each clinic gets along well, then that's good for business. If it doesn't, that's bad for business. And everybody in the management team needs to get along, and everybody in the upper management team and the leadership team. So this is kind of our organizational chart. And like what I was talking about here, this is most important to them. This is most important to the managers, and we have monthly manager meetings. And this is our leadership team. And these are the people that I spend daily and weekly stuff with. And I spend monthly with them, and I have little to no contact with them. Why? Because I don't have a relationship with them. Our employees should always come first. They are the most valuable asset. It all trickles down, the leadership team, onto the staff, onto the patients. So what do we want to be a leader? I think this kind of says it all, right? A leader is one that gets down there and does the work with them, and a boss is kind of go, go, go. Another thing that we want out of them is we do have a lot of incentives, and our three main incentives are cash, social, moral sort of recognition. But we know that if you look at, those are mainly extrinsic motivators, but if you look at the difference between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation always wins out. So really from day one with our mentorship program with new therapists, we want them to want to be good, right? And we say, these are what we say is good, and we want you to want to be good. And guess what? You're in charge. You're doing these things not so that your boss doesn't get onto you. It's because you want to be great at what you do. And guess what? You're in control of your practice. You're in control of your schedule. You're in control of how much profit you make, your fit, the culture of the clinic, your skill set for sure, and the attitude. I've got a friend that every morning he wakes up and says PMA, PMA for positive mental attitude, right? And his wife is really annoyed with that. But he does really well, and it just shows, you know. Okay, so other things that employees want is lots of times they want to see what a future is for them. So we bring them in, and we say, first of all, you need to focus on yourself. You need to, be a good team member, and then fit in the matrix as far as what we're looking for as saying a good provider, having patients that, meeting their goals, having net promoter scores that are great out there. And if you do a good job at that, we say, well, maybe you could be a mentor. That mentor mentors every new clinician that comes in for the first year, right? And if they do a good job of that, we say, well, maybe they can be a good manager. So they maybe come in as an assistant manager or a clinic manager, and if they do a good job of that, then they might mentor a manager. And if you mentor a manager and you're good at mentoring other managers, then you can maybe become a regional manager and have a string of particular locations. And we need these people because they're the ones that need to have the relationships with their staff so that we'll have happy and satisfied employees and ultimately have happy and satisfied patients. So we call it building relationships and helping people. So the ABCs to success, another way of putting it, it's the what, and I'm big on habits. That's the Q. The how is the routine. We say it's by doing our daily core values, quality service, relationships. The why, that's the reward. You're a great practitioner. You'll be successful. And the final outcome is the ultimate impact and goal. And that's with us, we're looking for growth. We're looking to be profitable, and we're looking to have happy and satisfied employees. That's what we're looking for. So this is our core values on a daily scale: quality, service, relationships. Leads to great billing, practice management, great marketing. And our scorecards are just some of the key performance indicators that we look at on a weekly basis and monthly basis. We look at these individually, and then we look at these for a clinic, and then we look at these for a region, and then we look at these for the whole company. And this is kind of what one looks like. And the goal is that if you hit your key performance measurements, it's going to reflect in your P&Ls. And all the managers, and thanks for this, Derry, for getting this all kind of started here, goes and they do their own budgets. And that's good too, because they kind of set the standard of what they think it's going to be. And then we can go back to the weekly and monthly metrics to see if it's going to match where their budget is. What's good about that is it gets things to be more predictive. When do you want to grow? What does your clinic, this is back for the students, what does your clinic look like? What does it look like 2 to 5 years from now? What does it look 5 years from now if you have 100 referrals? Or are you guys going to be running it the same way? We don't care. It's just this is how we do it. Profitability of a clinic is evaluated every 2 years. And once a clinic exceeds these thresholds, then it's time to expand, look for another new clinic, or maintain status quo. So motivation. Each of us has an emotional side and an elephant side, and you got to reach both by doing three things: direct the rider. And if you can kind of think about it, think about yourself as an emotional person, and you have an elephant side that says, I just don't want to go there. And you got that little rider up there whipping you saying, we got to go there, we got to go there. And then you kind of shape the path along the way, right? And this works out really well with the mentorship program, because we say, hey, we're not expecting you to be where we are day one, but we want to find the bright spots to direct the rider. We want to find the feeling to motivate the elephant, and then shape the path saying, hey, in this whole year, your goals was to do this. Here's the path, and here's how you need to go to get it, and here's how long you've gone so far. And I talked a little bit about this before. Motivation that we use too is social reward, more responsibilities, praise from the team. Economic, we give bonuses on at least a monthly basis. And the moral one's pretty easy, because honestly, with what physical therapy and occupational therapy does, is we get paid for helping people. So that's a really good field to be in. So questions to them is, how much do you want to bill per patient? Ideally, one clinical FTE bills out $18,000 to provide what an average salary would be, with a 60-40 split, company versus individual. They can do it however they want to do it. A lot of places nowadays are going cash basis, and they want to do for an hour. I say, okay, that's fine, but you got to look at how much you want to bill per hour, because you got to make sure all these things add up. How much time do you want to spend? And obviously that varies. If you spend 30 minutes, it equates to something. If you spend an hour, it equates to something different. What we do at advanced physical therapy is we do every 45 minutes. There's a couple 30-minute spots in there per day, and those are mainly for post-operative patients that don't really need that much time. And then in Kansas City, it's every 30 minutes. The reason why it's every 30 minutes in Kansas City is the reimbursement in Kansas City is not as good as it is in Wichita, so that we do it that way, but we still do one-on-one care, where some other offices double, triple book people. So, questions. How much do you value your patients? What are your core values? And what do you want to focus on? That will be a good driver as to how you want to practice. Do your core values play a role in deciding how much time you spend with patients? Probably do. Answers to these questions will determine how much volume you'll want to see as a provider. So how many staff do you have? That will help out with your top line. What will their schedule be? That will help out with the cash. And how much will they bill and how much will you pay? That kind of affects your bottom line. Not just for them when you're starting a clinic, but as you're growing a clinic and doing multiple clinics. So now looking at the space. This is where Brad was stuck on back in the day. Find the right location in an area that fits the population and referral-based standards. So we look for 500 square feet. We look for a break room, therapist's office, gym, half of the space, one treatment room per 2 providers, 2 chairs per therapist on the waiting room, 2 parking spots per therapist, 1 eval room, larger for the manager, 2 administrative seats per 4 to 5 clinical FTEs, and 1 modality, which would be like electrical stim, per 1.5 clinical FTEs. And ideally, and if you guys have been to therapy before, starting in a waiting room, bike room, evals, modalities. And one thing that's really nice about having these sort of setups is that if you're starting new locations, like we're starting a location in Wellington right now, we have a whole handbook that tells exactly how we want things. I mean, there's different modifications, but pretty much go with the standard. So why do we have 500 square feet? 500 square feet is twice the national average collected per square foot. 15,000 collected for 500 square feet equals 36, and the national is 18. So what we ideally want is 2,500 square feet for 5 therapists, 10 parking spots, 10 waiting room chairs, 3 eval rooms. So if there's anybody out there that has some space, maybe you can talk to me at the end of the presentation here. So cost, price per square foot is something to look at. Cost for build out, cost for equipment. This is a formulary that I came up with that we like to keep our cost for the rent 6% or less. And so if you had 500 square feet, $1,000, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, we kind of have this so that when we're out there looking for square footages or we're talking to different offices, this is kind of what we like to go with, if we can. Another thing to look at is starting small and then having room to grow. Like if you could start with 1,000 square feet, but having a place that could get up to 3,000 square feet, that'd probably be ideal. And we look for space within or near referral bases. So cash. There, Derry. A top line is important, but when I look at a P&L, I go directly to the bottom line. Makes sense. So you have your population base, you have your referrals, that equals your top line. Your visits will determine how much staff you need, and your two biggest costs are your staff and space. So I put that as cost, and that's your profit and loss. It all connects at the end of the form to form a top line and a bottom line. So the final driver, successful clinic, is cash. So I went over this a little bit ago. What I asked them to do is fill in a budget sheet for the students here, and they don't know what they're doing there, but it's good that they do that, because if they're going to go get a loan from a bank's going to be looking for them to do stuff like this. What do you want your top line to be? What do you want your bottom line to be? And you know that you can translate those tops and bottom lines back all the way back to your population base. How much do you want to spend on different costs like staff and space? Set a percentage. What percentage do you want to make? National averages for PT offices is 20% profit, so that's where we set ours at. Going back to the budget here. Do you guys, Vern Harnish, he's from Wichita, but he has and I saw Dad has a book right over there, yeah, Mastering the Rockefeller Habits, and then 2.0 as well. I like this quote: revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash flow is king. That was from his book, so makes sense. Back to the top line and bottom line. Go on from here. So expectations for us. Profit expectations for a new clinic should be up to 10%. A growing clinic from, when you're having 2 to 4 providers, 10 to 20%, and then 5 plus at 20% plus growth. And then to get that, you really need to look at your cost too. Expectation is 40% for clinical wages, another 5, maybe 6% for administrative wages at the clinic, and then 6% for rent. So going back to that, wages, and cost, and overhead too, and then the profit there, all kind of goes into a pie graph. Going back to this number one cost of staff, our expectation is 85% clinical, 15% administrative at a clinic level. If our cost for wages is over 65%, we're pretty much losing. 55 is about 10%, 45 is 20%, all things else being equal on that budget sheet. So this is kind of interesting too, that you can kind of look at on how much you can pay somebody. So if somebody was seeing a total revenue of $15,000, I can pay them, 65. I think that says 65 there. But if they're bringing in $20,000, I could be paying them $96,000 and still fit in with those staff ratios, even with the same amount of evals. Now that doesn't mean each patient is the same. Some might take a little bit longer, and some might take a little bit less time. And some of the specialties take a little bit longer, and some of them take a little less time too. So Other things to look about is COGS, total expense, net income, space cost, and what we're looking for to bring in to keep those 6% ratios. So just looking at the 5 drivers, if you have a population base with referrals, staff, space, how does that translate into cash? 5,000 people equals 20 referrals is what we're looking at. And this is referrals go into visits based on the amount of visits they see. And this is how much staff we ideally look for to take care of those visits. And this is how much space you need. It's pretty much about 500 square feet per clinical FTE. And cash for a new clinic, 0 to 10% profit, growing 10 to 20% profit, and maintenance 20% plus profit. National average profit in 5 years or faster. And looking at these drivers and going through these beforehand, we've been able to take places to get them up to our ideal clinic size within a year. So that's been a really good thing to do. So I just asked them, what is their ideal clinic? And then they come back and we talk about what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. And generally, by the time I get done with all this, their head's spinning so much that they're saying, I don't know, maybe I just come work for you or whatever, and we can figure this out. Sounds good to me. Any questions?
Thanks for being here. I assume not every physical therapist comes in and stays in for the rest of their life. So is there an average length of time that people stays with you, or maybe before they move on to something else?
We've been lucky that we've been able to keep a lot of the same staff for a long period of time. I think part of that is to do with that you see especially motivated staff, that they have a future with us, sort of thing. The ones that, and I have seen some that for whatever reason they just don't buy into the whole thing as to how this all works, and have recently lost a few people that are about the 5-year mark, sort of thing. I think if you really try to vet them out early, you kind of know the type of person that you're going to get to begin with. Wichita State's been really good in the Wichita area because they have pre-PT programs, and we'll get them in as students, and if they're good, we'll bring them in like as a tech or as a care coordinator. And if they're good with that and they get into PT school, we give them a sign-on bonus prior to going into school, and then it's a 3-year contract after that. And then we say, do you have friends, and can you bring your friends along? So they bring along like people, hopefully. So we really don't have a whole lot of turnover, which has been good.
Hey, the Germans are coming. I'm surprised they beat out the Israelis in this, because medically the Israelis are awesome. It's the Beamer concept. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
FDA had to approve it. It's here now the last 2 years, but it's been big in Europe for a long period of time. Again, it appears to be awesome, rejuvenating cells. Could you expand on that a little? Not
too much. I've been on the Beamer and felt good. I don't know too much. And I know a little bit about how, as far as at the cellular level, as far as how that helps with the blood flow. And blood flow is key to most everything. For whatever reason, it hasn't taken as much around here that I've seen, and I've kind of just been waiting for some other places to kind of do something, but keeping a good pulse on it. I've been sick this week, and they were supposed to come back into my office on Tuesday afternoon to meet with them again. I've been on that one time before. I think there's a place out east that has one, correct?
Fred Dobbs has a doctor.
Oh, Fred does too? Okay, cool, yeah.
His son-in-law runs it.
Good, Fred's a good guy. I like Fred.
Okay, thank you.
I know you went to school to learn physical therapy, but where did you learn these business and administration skills? This is an awesome.
Oh, thanks. By screwing up a lot. I paid for my education 15 years, plus having dairy and having Brad and having my dad and just people to kind of help me out along the way. It's been really, really good.
It looks like your model is on the insurance payback, but have you considered the Atlas MD model at all?
Yeah, and I've talked to Josh a few times. We do see patients from them, and I think it would be a good model, especially from what he's doing with employers and just kind of direct contracting with employers for physical therapy services. And we're large enough in an area like Wichita that we can take care of their outpatient needs in a convenient location for about any business around Wichita area, at least. So yes.
Let me ask a question related to reimbursement limitations on Medicare and Medicaid that the federal government has for doctors. Are you covered under that? And if you are, how has that been affected under the Obamacare environment that we've gone through the last few years?
Yeah, I mean that's always that's always something to look at. Every year, something new comes up, and we don't know what we're doing until they decide not to do it at the last moment, sort of thing. And we've already been ready to make some of those changes. One of the things that's kind of nice is that we've, especially on the primary care side, I think they're the ones that were hit the first with some of the stuff, so they were kind of the test dummies on that. And all of it, and some of it's not the worst thing in the world either, some of that sort of stuff. I know that doesn't really answer it too much. Every year is a new thing, right? So it'd be nice to be more predictive.
Are there limitations on Medicaid, Medicare reimbursements to you?
Yeah, there are, but there's also exceptions to that. It's just jumping through hoops and that sort of stuff. We haven't ran into too many, but like I said too before, is that if the national averages is 10 to 15, and we're just a little bit under 10, so we're a little bit below the national averages. So we're a pretty conservative group as how much we treat and those sorts of things as well. So maybe that's part of it.
Thank you. And if I could expound on that question a little bit too. Two questions. First one, what would Medicaid expansion mean to your operation?
Expansion as far as
expanding the base of Medicaid recipients.
Oh, Medicaid. Is that what you're? Oh, okay. You're talking about Medicaid, not Medicare.
Yeah, you mentioned both Medicaid.
Oh, okay. And Medicare.
That was one question. And the other part, I love the model that you put together
Thanks.
here. Does that model work west of Wichita, where you don't have a population?
Sure. So on the first part of it, one of the things about being in any sort of healthcare field, especially physical therapy, with the aging population, I hope I'm answering this good for you, is with the aging population, they're always looking for low-cost alternative healthcare. And another thing too is a lot of times people want to stay in their homes. They want to be active members of the community. And if you can keep somebody active member of their community as long as they can, that's a win-win-win for the insurance company, for physical therapy as a practice, as well as the aging population. I mean, just when I went to school, went into WSU at 96, that's all they talked about was the aging population. I think there's definitely a good 10 to 20 year run with that. So I think that there's definitely going to be people out there. Now, is it going to get paid? That's always that's the bigger question. As far as is there the need? The need's going to be there for sure. And as far as Western Kansas, there's a lot of opportunity in Western Kansas. There's not a lot of the biggest bottleneck that we have is staffing, and the biggest bottleneck, probably times 5 out there, is staffing, because there's just not that many therapists out there. A good friend of mine that went to WSU PT school, he has a place out in Garden City and it's thriving, but one of the things that he does even to get people is he has apartments for them to come when they do clinicals and that sort of stuff. So he provides different options. I mean, that's an entrepreneur doing those sorts of things to kind of get things out there. So, and I've been a little bit leery because finding somebody to go out there, I know that we would be busy, and reimbursement out there is really good, particularly on the work comp. You do have to have somebody that speaks Spanish out there, and if they ever go sideways with you, good luck getting somebody else in there. So, but we're in a town of Sterling, Kansas, which is 6,000 people. So, and some of the medical communities, when you look at smaller towns, they might be the medical hub of the county, which might be 20,000, even though the city is 5,000. We have a place in Independence, Kansas, that has 1,100, 1,200 visits a month. They see in the year more than the whole town is in visits. So, but they get from the county and surrounding areas. And then we think that we're going to go into Winfield too, and we think that we can kind of get the difference between Independence and Winfield, just with where people will drive.
Last question, David, reserved for your dad, actually. Teasing here. One of the things that, as a small business operator myself, expanding from a mom and pop to a larger, can you go into some of the management techniques and some of the challenges, and how do you manage basically 250 people?
I don't. That's the thing. I have managers that manage them. Basically, you just want to be close to the people that you're with on a daily and weekly basis, and have good relationships with them, and have good communication, and have buy-in, and have everybody communicate from the top down to the bottom up. We have weekly meetings from our leadership group, and we'll hear about things that at the clinics that we should be doing differently, and we say, yeah, we need to make a change here. So, but that's not me necessarily. That's just everybody doing their part on the daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual basis sort of thing. So, and that's the same with the plans to growth too, is we got to get more regional managers involved and get them trained and kind of oversee those things. So,
Mr. David Todd.
thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.